You've heard it before. The connected age. Life at the speed of the internet. It's a digital world. What you might not have heard is that we can keep it safe. Because at CrowdStrike, we stop breaches. So wherever you go, go with confidence. Anywhere. Welcome to Anywhere. CrowdStrike. We stop breaches.
The racing season has begun. Last weekend marked the opening round of the 2021 Fanatec GT World Challenge America powered by AWS. For CrowdStrike Racing, it marked a return to the podium in both TC America and in the GT3 category. But the racing never stopped in the virtual world, hence round 4 of 5 of the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League. CrowdStrike is the official internet and cloud security provider of Fanatec GT World Challenge America powered by AWS. Effective cybersecurity means you see and stop threats like hackers as fast as possible. In 2020 and now 2021, CrowdStrike has been a leader in the work and home transition, helping companies protect their global workforce from online threats. Kyle Heyer, joined by Ryan Marine and Kevin Boehm tonight for round 4 of 5 of the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League. A nice change from the sunny California skies, maybe off to a sunny virtual realm. And as I say sunny, the rain has begun to fall here in the session here, Ryan. So, of course, the B-roll gods have not been kind to me tonight, but a rainy Hungaroring, Ryan, for round 4 of 5.
It's a pretty cool circuit, to say the least, built in 1986. In just 8 months, has the distinction of being the track that took the least amount of time to complete in the history of all of the various Formula One circuits we've had over the years. Hosted a lot of great racing through the years, open wheel and sports car racing, even some of the FIA semi-truck racing that we've seen over the years. So a pretty cool place. Unique to see the rain. It has the tradition of being a hot summer event for Formula One. Only once has there been a rain race in the Hungarian Grand Prix on the Formula One circuit, so a little bit of a change of pace here, and it should be a real challenge for all of our drivers in both the Pro and Am ranks.
And looking forward to seeing some racing in the rain here today. Kevin, welcome back. Congratulations. A very successful weekend in TC America last week at Sonoma, the season opening round, coming off of a championship run in the TCA category, moving up to TC this year. Already fruitful, Kevin. So congratulations on that, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And today's race is going to be quite a bit different than it was in Sonoma. Sonoma was pretty perfect weather, and here we are with pouring rain. It's going to be slippery out there.
It certainly is going to be very slippery and treacherous, to say the least. Ryan, going back to this racetrack, this is a track that I don't know a whole lot about, but let's have a look here at our track map. Of course, it is a 4.381 kilometer circuit in Hungary, and it's got a whole bunch of corners and two very distinct areas. The first and last sectors are very tight and twisty, and the middle sector pretty fast and flowing. It all starts with a run down to turn number 1, a hairpin of sorts that will lead you into a kink in turn 2. Then turn 3 is a sharp left-hander. Turn 4, named after Nigel Mansell, and then that'll take you on a run down to turn 5, 6, and 7. Onto the backside of the course, that white sector number 2. Lots of left-right transitions, a couple chicanes here up to turn number 11, named after Jean Alesi, and then the run to that red sector, the final one on the racetrack. A lot of rights and lefts, a lot of elevation change here as well to contend with before that long run down the front straightaway. So I think this is a great racetrack for GT3 racing. It really allows for leaning on the brakes and the traction control. We're going to see a lot of that tonight, Ryan, in the treacherous conditions. But a racetrack that many might not think of when they think of worldwide famous circuits, but that's certainly not necessarily warranted. It's a beautiful place.
It is, and it also has the distinction now of having the second longest active streak on the Formula One calendar, only behind Monza, with the cancellation of last year's Monaco Grand Prix. You talked about how tight and twisty it is. I've heard this place described as a tourniquet of a racetrack, which I thought was pretty evocative. Also, you'll hear it called Monaco without the buildings. And I think Monaco was actually the inspiration in a lot of cases for this track. Very tight, like you mentioned, the elevation change. It's been altered a few times over the years. The current layout, 14 turns, a shade over 2.7 miles. Changed back in 2003 as we see a spin there for Sam Michaels in one of the Mercedes. And I think we're going to see quite a bit of that with these difficult conditions. but a lengthening of the front straightaway and a tightening of that first corner. Turn 12 also tightened in 2003, both done in the interest of trying to promote overtaking. Not a lot of it in the history of this track. It has a reputation for being very difficult to pass on, at least for single-seaters. I think especially with the rain, though, we might have a bit more action here with these GT3 cars, and I'm excited to see what we have in store for us here tonight.
And for Kevin, racing in the rain is always a challenge, but especially on these sort of flat circuits where there's not a lot of banking for the water runoff, water ends up pooling in a lot of places. And as we've seen, I'm thinking back to, of course, the most recent FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Spa 6 hours. We saw a lot of puddling and pooling and driving through it, even here in Assetto Corsa Competizione, modeled fairly well. What's your experience been like with driving on wet circuits, and how much of a challenge is that?
Yeah, I mean, the wet tracks are always a huge challenge because the amount of water on the track really can vary from location to location, and that water depth really has a big impact on how much grip you have. So whenever you're driving on a wet surface, you sort of have to go hunting for the grip. On the dry, there's normally kind of one ideal way around the track, but when the track gets wet, you suddenly start ignoring that just a little bit, and you go searching for where the track is the driest, or you find some place that has just a little bit more grip because maybe there's not as much rubber buildup or different things on the track. So I think you're going to see a little bit kind of exploratory lines, and on top of that, you really have to pay attention to things like painted lines and the curbs, because those things are often slippery as well. So if you run just a little bit wide, then it can be really dangerous.
Absolutely. There's Bill Clark in the number 92 Porsche working his way around, currently third with a 1:57.753. The quickest time he has run so far. Note for anybody watching on the YouTube chat, if you've got any questions for Kevin or Ryan or for myself, make sure that you leave them in the YouTube comments. Also, hashtag CrowdStrike Cup is how you can join the conversation on Twitter or social media. And make sure you join us for the next round of the Fanatec GT World Challenge America powered by AWS from Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas at the end of the month of April. So a little bit of a gap in the schedule, but make sure you don't miss the next one, the 3.5-mile 20-turn F1 circuit in Austin, Texas. It was just there this past weekend. It's beautiful, and it's prepped for some GT3 racing coming up in a few months. Alexeinkov at the top of the order right now in the 612. Ryan, if I remember correctly, Roman Alexeinkov was one of the drivers that ran in the AM race last time because he had missed the pro race or something of the sort. So I think he'll get to run in this race now and show his talents off.
I think there was perhaps a connection issue or something like that that caused him to miss that. Your memory is good. I had forgotten about that, and he was very strong in that race. And setting the bar here early, has a 0.3 of a second advantage over that. Now, actually, with that last lap, even faster, nearly half a second over second place Zach Koonin. If you look at the leaderboard on the top left of the screen, the Ferrari's looking strong here early, then a Porsche in third. And anytime it rains, you think about the Porsches first. They tend to excel in conditions like this with their rear engine configuration. That weight over the drive wheels always adds a little bit of extra stability in treacherous and low grip conditions. So traditionally, if it rains, you think Porsche, but the Ferraris right now looking very strong.
For sure. Sam Michaels in the CrowdStrike Racing AWS Mercedes-AMG GT3 running in fourth right now. This is a car that typically does very, very well in the tight and twisty sections of racetracks, and there was a lot of that here at the Hungaroring. And at low speed, I fear maybe, Kevin, is the amount of torque this engine produces might be a bit of a challenge to harness. So these drivers will be playing with traction control and ABS settings. You can do that here in Assetto Corsa Competizione. That's something that drivers have in their hands, is the ability to mess with those electronic devices, and oftentimes it'll really make you a lot quicker if you can figure out how to harness those to your advantage.
That's right, but you honestly, you can't just rely on them completely, because it's a lot more efficient if you can kind of be really gentle and really purposeful with the throttle and the brakes, and not rely on those systems. You can actually go just a little bit faster. So it's still going to take a lot of skill and a lot of kind of focus for the drivers tonight to really try to maintain control of the cars, especially in the tight turns where your tires are really easy to spin, and then staying off the curbs and finding the grip on the track.
So just to update everyone on the schedule for this evening, we're going to kick things off with the pro race. That's what we're qualifying for now. be a 25-minute race, and then we'll have qualifying and a race for the AM race. And of course, Ryan, we've separated the Pro and Am by those who would like to have a real competitive event and those who are just here for fun. And CrowdStrike Racing offering both of those experiences. You pick where you want to run, if you want fun or if you want to have a wheel-to-wheel battle that's super intense and super serious. That's what we're gearing up for now.
Well, let's keep in mind it's fun in both cases, but
Absolutely.
it's a different type of fun. And the spirit of the pro race is spend the week in preparation, getting a setup put together. Remember, Assetto Corsa Competizione goes to great lengths to try and mimic the SRO racing you see in real life around the world, including the Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS, and that means realistic cars, realistic tracks, and you're working through different weather conditions, different temperatures, things like that, to try and make sure that you've got your car set up for the best possible circumstances. Maybe you've tried out rain running in the preparation for this race just in case, and that's what the pros have been doing throughout the week. This is a group that takes their sim racing very seriously. The AM group, it's a great place just to jump in and have some fun, and probably didn't spend quite as much time practicing in the build-up for the race, and that's great. It's good to see that the CrowdStrike Racing folks have found a way to balance the two and an outlet for everybody, depending on how much effort they want to put into this.
And this wonderful CrowdStrike red livery on Sam Michael's car reminds me that one of the new safety cars for the 2021 Formula One season is one of these Mercedes AMGs, and it's got the CrowdStrike livery on the side of it as well, which is a really cool thing that we saw. And we're going to see at the pointy end of the Formula One grid at the start and during full course yellow. So that's a pretty cool integration there, Ryan, to see that car now used as a Formula One safety car with the CrowdStrike bird on the side. Is a pretty neat thing to see.
It is, and it goes to the connection that CrowdStrike has with Mercedes and with the Mercedes-AMG Formula One team. And I talked to George Kurtz, who raced over the weekend at Sonoma Raceway, won 3 races actually, one in the GT World Challenge race and then both of the GT America races he came out on top in. But he was talking about the relationship that CrowdStrike has built with the Mercedes F1 team, and it was interesting to learn that Mercedes was a customer of CrowdStrike before CrowdStrike ever became a sponsor, because Mercedes was looking to find ways to protect its data. It's a high-stakes game, Formula One and motorsports in general, and they saw an advantage in incorporating CrowdStrike with their team and their plans. And so that relationship has only grown, and you see that represented now with the safety car like you talked about.
For sure. Just gearing up here for the race here in just a couple minutes. Qualifying still underway as we prepare for the fourth of the rounds here for the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League. Of course, our last run out was at Silverstone. We saw a lot of really solid racing there as well at the flat and very famous British circuit. And in a lot of ways, I think these tracks share some similarity. I think this track is a little bit more point and shoot than Silverstone was. Silverstone, one of those examples of a very fast-flowing circuit. Here, there are some sectors like that, some sectors that are very point and shoot. But turn 1 here is that very sharp second gear hairpin, and Ryan, that opening lap is going to be critical.
It will be. And again, this was the part of the track I mentioned in 2003 that was altered to try and promote overtaking, to have a longer straightaway into a tighter corner. And Kevin, you know that if you're looking for a place to overtake, a long straight into a tight hairpin with a heavy braking zone, that should present a really good opportunity. But for that to be the first corner on the lap, my oh my, the start to this race could be pretty wild, especially in the wet.
Yeah, that's right. The longer the straightaway and the higher speed you approach the first turn of a race is definitely nerve-wracking, because everybody's so close, and even just milliseconds of different kind of times when everybody hits the brakes can make everybody show up to the first turn at different speeds and different locations, and you have to really be on your game to know where everybody is and stay out of trouble.
And then there's so much spray involved when you have a track this wet. This qualifying session, only 20 seconds left in it. Every driver will be able to complete the lap that they're on when the clock goes down to all zeros. But we talk about how important qualifying is, and that is true no matter what, but it's especially true in conditions like these. The last thing you want to do is start behind a bunch of cars in that spray, behind all those rooster tails, which Assetto Corsa Competizione does a great job of modeling, almost too well. It looks very familiar, I suppose, to a driver who's experienced that in real life.
Yeah, that's right. Especially you can see the car up ahead of us right now. There's a rooster tail, and the closer you get to that car, all that water is going to be right on your windshield. And Assetto Corsa Competizione really does a great job of simulating what happens in real life. And you just have to start driving a lot more on instinct and honestly looking at the side of the track and trying to find some other visual cue to kind of make up for it.
The other thing
that something.
Sorry, Ryan. I was just going to note that we're watching Bill Clark be pretty aggressive on the rumble strips and curbing, and those will get slicker as the track begins to soak up all that water. The water will collect in those rumbles, and you see Clark go for a loop there. The different surface types will also see different grip levels throughout a race, and knowing where to manage that grip and what curbs you can and can't use with that wetness and water, that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, that's right, and you can only find that out by experimenting, and right there we saw Clark pushing really hard. It looked like he was on a flyer trying to improve that starting position, trying to use that rear engine configuration in the 911, and just couldn't quite keep the rear end under him, and it started to slip out, and around he goes. It's incredible how close those margins are from 0 to 0. You're pushing so hard to extract that little bit of extra speed, and it's very simple in conditions like these, especially just to overstep the bounds ever so slightly.
Yeah, Roman Alexinkov continues to be the quickest driver in the session by just about a half a second over Zachary Kunin in the 300 car. Sam Michaels third, and Dean Benaviste in fourth in the number 75. That's what we're looking at right now. Qualifying is complete. We'll head down to the racetrack here in just a minute to turn everybody loose for a 25-minute race. Kevin, 25-minute race in rain. How aggressive are you into turn one, and how willing are you to make move, or are you just going to spend the first couple laps taking it easy and trying to figure out how the racetrack is going to feel?
Yeah, I mean, the cars are going to have so little grip. I think you have to take a conservative approach to turn one and make sure that you survive. These race scenarios, it's more about making it to the finish and seeing where you're at than it is to try to win the race in the first turn. I don't think aggressiveness is going to be well rewarded here. I think whoever can kind of obviously try to get through there quick, but also still be a little bit conservative. They're going to kind of put themselves in a position to fight for a win at the end.
So the rain continues to fall here as we set up on the grid, and the conditions are not likely to change. I've been told by the virtual weatherman here that it's going to continue to rain, and that could be good news for some drivers and bad news for others. Now I've been told the weather will begin to wane a little bit towards the AM race just a touch, but full wet conditions. Track is 19 degrees, or air temp 19 degrees Celsius, track temp 21 degrees Celsius. And it's going to rain the entire time. So at least there's consistency in those conditions at the very least, Kevin, which makes them predictable, at least in some sense.
Yeah, that's going to help a lot because especially rain is difficult, but whenever the amount of rain is changing, either it doesn't even matter if it's increasing or decreasing, but when it's changing all the time, it's really hard to judge whether you need to be going faster or slowing down, and that adds a whole new level of difficulty. So if the rain keeps going pretty consistently, then they can at least kind of learn each corner, each lap, and sort of understand how much grip they have to deal with.
So just a couple minutes until we start the session here, and for those wondering who is in this race, well, this is basically CrowdStrike and AWS friends and family. They're all here to just have a good time this evening, and of course, we invite you, if you're CrowdStrike or AWS friends and family, make sure you come out and join us for the next one. Nothing on the schedule as of now, but make sure that you follow on CrowdStrikeRacing.com to learn about when the next event will be. I mentioned the next real-world Fanatec GT World Challenge powered by AWS event is at the end of April. It'll be the first week of May, in fact, down in Austin, Texas. And the virtual world has allowed everybody to kind of continue to engage in discourse amongst their communities, even through the pandemic. And that's been one really strong thing, Ryan, about the motorsports community, is that we've got this amazing platform in Assetto Corsa Competizione to continue interacting in the same environment that we would, at least the same people that we would in the real world, even with the pandemic. It's been really pleasant to get everybody together in a virtual room and still put on a show and a competition.
Yeah, it's been really neat to see how the professional racing environment has really embraced sim racing, and it's always been embraced to some degree, typically as a track learning tool, or at the very extreme level as a real development tool for teams and manufacturers. But it's become more than that. I think when we got to the point where we were going months at a time without seeing one another at the racetrack, we were looking for other outlets to get to reconvene, and sim racing certainly has provided that opportunity over the last year or so, and it's been fun to see that grow. And I think it's also introduced people who were sim racing enthusiasts who didn't necessarily see the correlation to real-world motorsports to the real-world equivalent, and I think it's been good for the sport as a whole.
It's brought everybody together, and that's CrowdStrike's new goal in 2021 is to win as one. When it comes to cybersecurity, we're all on one team with a fight to beat the adversary and stop data breaches. And I love the parallels that CrowdStrike draws between cybersecurity and racing. There's so much to draw between beating your adversaries on the racetrack and beating them in the world of cybersecurity. So a nice parallel to draw. And also in the past, their motto has been every second counts, and that's too perfect between cybersecurity and racing. Love the speed mottos, love everything relating to the racing, and glad to have CrowdStrike supporting this and Fanatec GT World Challenge. So a minute and a half left here until we get on rolling on our pace lap. Kevin, we have about 2.7 miles to get your car up to operating temperature. What are you doing to make sure that you go into turn one with brakes and tires underneath you?
Yeah, I mean, really, you're going to have to be kind of steering the car back and forth and accelerating and braking and trying to get these wet tires up to temperature. The water on the track is going to be doing a really good job of cooling off those tires, so you really have to work them and try to slide the car just a little bit, but not too much, to try to get some heat in the tire, and that'll increase the grip and make it a little bit easier to get through turn one when the race starts.
Always love the last-minute conversations happening. Robbie Montanola is joining us here in this race. Marketing for SRO America. We're currently in 9th is where he qualified. He's asking Josh Staffen how much fuel to take. So playing crew chief and driver here, Ryan, for this 25-minute race. And Robbie's going to hate me for calling him out on that, but happened in the broadcast chat. So he knows exactly how much. 43 liters is the answer to that question.
Okay, so that should get you through 25 minutes. And if you're wondering, well, why does that matter? Just put in a full tank. Well, there is a competitive advantage to running with less fuel. It is lighter. It helps with the balance of the car. It changes where the weight is located. And also, fuel is not a stationary weight. It sloshes around in the tank, and so that has an effect on the handling of the race car, especially in the corners. So there are reasons to want to run towards the low end of things. And also, in the rain, the speed should be down, and fuel consumption also should be down a little bit. So maybe he's trying to make some adjustments for the conditions. I suppose that's also a possibility.
Absolutely. Also, the Porsche that Bill Clark and Sam Parmet and a few others are driving. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, but that car fuels in the nose. Now, is the fuel tank also located in the nose? And if so, that's got to be pretty significant in terms of how it affects the handling on that car versus the others.
Well, that's a good point. We know the engine is in the rear. I know that you're right that the fueling is done up at the front of the car, but where the tank itself is located, I can't say. Kevin, you got any insight into that one? I know you're more of a Honda guy, but you're a car guy too.
That's right. No, the Porsche has the tank. It's normally sitting kind of just behind the front axle, but more right over top of it. So it definitely is going to have an effect on how much front grip the car has. But since the race is so short, as long as you've been doing your practice with the similar fuel load that you are in the race, then you basically can set the car up for that fuel load, and it shouldn't change much over the course of the race. Like changing the 40 liters over the course of the entire race isn't going to change the handling too much as long as you plan for it from the beginning.
So some great insight there from Kevin Bohm as we roll into the middle sector of this circuit. That very quick right-left chicane saw those big orange anti-cut curbs, and we'll go back a little bit deeper in the field and find someone that's going through the corner. Those orange danger carrots they got over there, Ryan. You want to stay off of those, you cut those corners, you're going to get yourself a penalty. So stay on the course and the black stuff through that section.
Now, and there's also a chance of damaging the car. These cars very aero dependent. The under tray on the back, the diffuser, certainly, and the splitter also vulnerable going over some of those high curbs that are there to prevent cars from cutting the corners. And so, yeah, you definitely want to play nice and easy with those if you can. It could definitely affect your race adversely if you are too aggressive in those areas.
Field slowing down, now entering the final sector here at the Hungaroring. And we'll turn them loose for 25 minutes at just under 2 minutes a lap. About 12 to 15 laps, somewhere thereabouts. As we enter this very fast switchback section with these long left and right hand turns. And I'm not really sure if it's going to matter what car anybody is in once you get rolling. I think the one thing about rain is it's always the great equalizer when it comes to grip levels. One car might have a little bit of an advantage, that being the Porsche. Everyone else is pretty much on a level playing field. Traction control, ABS, all those settings going to get tweaked, turned, and changed around to try to find the maximum grip possible here on a rainy Hungaroring. CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League with 13 of these drivers in the pro category. We'll have an AM race just after, but it's finally time to go racing for round number 4. Roman Alexinkov in the silver and blue Ferrari on the inside of the front row to the start line, waiting for the green flag to drop. Zachary Kunin on the outside in a black and orange Ferrari. Green flag flies, we're racing. The Acura gets a great start from behind, 3 wide up the inside, all the way against the tight barrier down there towards turn number 1. And in the background, there's the CrowdStrike Mercedes going 3 wide middle, and Alexinkov gives up the spot to Kunin to turn 1 around. The outside goes the 75 car, 3 wide through the first corner, Ryan.
Kunin very aggressive on the defense there after getting a great jump at the start. Impressive opening corner from this field, but they're not done yet. Definitely still as close as they're going to be throughout the course of this race. They're dicing for position, and look at that spray. It must be miserable being deep in this field, trying to find your way around with limited visibility.
It was absolutely chaotic there for the first couple of corners. Alexinkov dropped out of the race lead into 3rd place. Now the order shuffles around. Up front, Kunin leads. It's 3 Ferraris and the Mercedes of Sam Michaels. And in the background, they were still double wide coming through turns 4, 5, and 6. But there's Jeff Corral in the Porsche. Sam Parmet right behind. And finally starting to string out here, Kevin. But the opening lap, pretty frantic into turn 1, but everybody's still going the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, overall, that was a really clean start, and now you're going to see some of the speed differentials from qualifying really string the field out, and hopefully that'll make the visibility a little bit better for some of the other cars. And here we're just going to see a lot of people kind of fighting that spray for the whole race to try to get ahead of the car.
Kevin, did that start remind you at all of the TC start for race 2 from last weekend? 3 wide down the pit straight like that?
Well, I mean, a little bit, but this one was actually a little bit cleaner, so
considerably cleaner.
Whoa, big slide by Ian Burleson in the 720 McLaren, trying to get power down there. Clark in that Porsche, the number 92, able to put the power down a little bit better, and that might be due to that rear engine layout that you mentioned earlier, Ryan. That puts more weight over those rear wheels and helps that car grip up on corner exit.
Well, again, that's one of the reasons that the Porsche has had so much success in the wet. It was a different Porsche, not the GT3 version, but a 911 won overall at Petit Le Mans a few years ago, beating some prototypes in part because of that configuration. Also, they had some advantage on tires. And here we go. We got a spin from the 4th place car, Sam Michaels, in the lone Mercedes in this field. If it had been dry, I would have said this is the car to keep an eye on. In the GT3 era of SRO racing at this racetrack, Mercedes has effectively dominated, won all but a couple of the races that have been held here at the Hungaroring. I do think the rain equalized things a little bit, and right now it's going to be a major recovery drive for Sam after that miscue.
Another car stalled on the driver's right. That's Hunter Reeve in another one of those Porsches. Purple metallic livery. Nice looking car, but better looking once it's back rolling again. Again, curbing could be some of the culprit here. A little bit slippery on that paint. Doesn't have quite as much roughness as the asphalt does, Kevin. And especially when it starts raining, you got to sort of adjust your racing line to stay off that stuff as much as possible. Hunter goes wide again.
Yeah, the real trick to racing in the rain is trying not to slide the car at all. You have the most grip that you're going to have right at that moment before the car starts to slide. So the closer that you can get to that the kind of the edge of that cliff, the faster you're going to go. But again, the closer you get, the more risk you are to sliding just a little bit, and that's when you go off track or you lose control of the car.
Off track for Ian Burleson there, Ryan. He gathered it back up and defensive on Bill Clark, but a bit of understeer that McLaren showed there through that corner.
Well, he's been under a lot of pressure. Clark has been heaping it on, looking really stout behind in that Porsche, and not taking too much risk at this point. I think the strategy at this stage in the race might just be apply the pressure, try and force a mistake, and be there to capitalize, but that's a great look out the windshield. Look at the visibility. There's not any, effectively. Really, really difficult conditions here for anyone who's not out in front. Advantage Kunin, and there you go. Burleson drifts wide, and that should open the door for Clark.
Been having trouble slowing that car down. Again, these cars are equipped with anti-lock brakes, which means every time the tire begins to lock, an electronic algorithm will basically prevent that from happening in order to maximize the braking force. But you can tweak it inside that car, and maybe Ian needs to make a slight adjustment there or back up the braking zones just a little bit. Robbie Montanola comes and joins the party in another one of those McLarens, the 69 car that Robbie is in command of. A little tight there on corner entry. He's going to run off the course just a touch.
Robbie, very experienced, a real-world racer in his own right, mostly in open-wheel cars. Now works with us on the SRO America side. Was looking really stout there and got on the attack, but I think he might have put his right side wheels up onto some of those painted curbs, and it didn't seem to treat him all that well.
It's par for the course so far, but Robbie had a pretty decent run at Silverstone the round to go, so he's starting to gather some momentum and has really found some pace. And you mentioned his racing experience in the real world, and obviously things have sort of aligned where he still works in motorsports, but hasn't been behind the wheel of one of these cars. And this is the beauty of a simulator like this, is it allows you to experience it. And I think Robbie has really taken to this in the last couple of months, and the pandemic has sort of allowed him to explore that a little bit more. And Kevin, you got a chance to do this as well, and get to drive a GT3 car, and while it's virtual, it still gives you at least a little bit of a taste of what it would be like.
Right, it definitely kind of set the fire under me, because I definitely want to be in one of these one day, and kind of, especially from the sounds, kind of spending as much time as I did in the Mercedes here in the virtual world. When I hear the Mercedes go by, in real life, it brings all of that time back, and it makes me want to see if it sounds the same in a real car one day.
It's one of the things I think Assetto Corsa Competizione does so amazingly well, Ryan. You and I have talked about this a lot, is the soundscape of a racetrack is something that Assetto Corsa Competizione just models absolutely perfectly. Prior to all the races, when we're sitting here in the virtual paddock, the echoes and the reverberations of all these motors, the flat sixes, the V8s, it's just an unbelievable experience to sit here and you feel like you're at the track.
Yeah, you're right, and think about the challenge that is for the developer. You've got all these different cars. They all have a different sound note to them. They are unique, and to capture them the way that they have, and then not just to capture them, but also to alter them depending on where on the track that they're running. If you're running, for instance, on the pit straight at Spa, that reverb you talked about, that's got a unique sound to it. If you're out kind of in the open a little bit, it's going to sound differently, and all of that is modeled with extreme accuracy. And if you close your eyes and you listen to some of these broadcasts, when we stop gabbing at least, you could definitely fool yourself and think that you're at the racetrack. It's really remarkable what they've done.
It really is cool. You mentioned Spa, of course. The CrowdStrike Racing team took on Spa last year in 2020, Ryan, and that's one of those bucket list racetracks for me to go to, and I'm sure for Kevin, you as well. Bucket list racetrack to drive on. So Ryan, that was an experience to see that CrowdStrike Racing car out there at Spa. I hope we can see it again in the future. And I know that George Kurtz has some more endurance racing on his schedule on the IMSA side this year as well, running in an LMP3 category car, which he ran at Daytona, and they found some success there as well.
Yeah, they should be at Sebring, not this weekend, but the following weekend for the 12-hour there. And talking to George over the weekend at Sonoma, they do plan to be back for the Total 24 Hours of Spa this year. Colin Brown, his co-driver in GT World Challenge America, alongside. And the plan is to be back with the same SPS automotive team that they ran with last year. They were really enthused about that experience, and I'm here to say I'm sure it was a great experience. I was there the year before, though, when it rained a lot like what we're looking at right now, pretty much the whole race. But the massive crowd they had there, it was a great environment, and I hope that George does get to go back and get the full spa experience, because I can't imagine what that place would be like without the crowd. It seems like it would be without its soul to some degree, and I'm glad we got the race in. That was wonderful, but certainly everyone's looking forward to having the race fans back trackside again.
I know that they're all like children to you, Ryan, but is there a favorite racetrack in your mind, and is it Spa? Because for me, that's got to be one of those tracks that's up there close.
On the road course side, yeah, it's the favorite I've been to. I'm an Indianapolis native, so I'm rather partial to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and going to the Indy 500, working the Indy 500 the last few years. That place is pretty remarkable too, but I'd put Spa up there right with just about anything. We got a spin there from the Rover Porsche, a little bit of contact there with the inside wall as well for Sam Parmet. Spa is as good as it gets, and the environment is a big reason why.
Kevin, favorite racetrack on the SRO America schedule, or then a track that it maybe is not, that is somewhere else globally or even domestically that you would like to go to, have visited, or is your favorite?
Yeah, I mean, I think the SRO schedule overall is really great. At every track we go to is a track that I think everybody needs to try to go to at least once. And for me, VIR is really one of the top on the list because of how close I grew up to that track, and how I kind of got started learning how to drive on track there, and it's just a special place to me. And then kind of the favorite track that's not on the schedule that I every time I get to drive there, it's just a memorable experience, is the Nürburgring Nordschleife. And it's impossible to describe that place because of the history of it, and just how just insane that track really is.
It really is one of those global five that belong in the same sentence together. For me personally, growing up in upstate New York, Watkins Glen is probably the halo racetrack that I would love to race at someday. And Road America is the other one. Now moved to Chicago. That's sort of the one close by. I've also got my first experience on track in the rain at Road America as well, which is that was a cool moment. Ryan, I know you've got experience driving in the rain in Miatas. My first experience was in a spec Miata at that track. A lot of fun for sure.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if I've run there in the rain in the spec Miata, but I probably have at one point or another. It is a remarkable place, and it's a great spectator venue as well. I can't wait. I hope the Kudos folks are listening. I'd really like that North American DLC, please. Let's get tracks like Road America so that folks can experience them in Assetto Corsa Competizione. That would be awesome.
Sounds like a deal to me. Hunter Reeve joining us from Operation Motorsport here tonight. And Kevin, you and I have talked extensively in the past about Operation Motorsport. But for those that maybe don't know, if you could summarize Operation Motorsport, what they do, and how they've helped you in the past in your TC America efforts.
Well, Operation Motorsport is a really cool organization that kind of takes some retired military personnel from all areas of the military, and they try to kind of insert them with existing teams in SRO. And what they kind of do when they're in a team is sort of fill whatever roles the team needs, and that can be anything from kind of managing tires for the whole event, or fuel, or cleaning the car, or kind of even things like social media and photography, and even cooking some food for the team. So there's lots of different roles that they can do based on their interest. And what that really does is it allows them to kind of be back part of a team atmosphere, because they normally get that when they're in the military, and that sort of I think helps them and really helps the teams really just be successful on track.
Really cool initiative that Operation Motorsport does in the paddock area. Hunter Reeve had a bit of a moment there in turn number one, sliding off course just a little bit, but continues to roll. Up in front, Zach Coonan leads, but I should note, Ryan, that Roman Alexeinkov last time by was a full second and 3/10 quicker. So that 612 car, the silver and blue Ferrari, is coming quick.
Well, that was your pole sitter, and didn't get a great start to this race. Dropped back a little bit, but does seem to have a stable platform under him at the moment. He has been slowly but surely chopping into that advantage for Zach Koonin. Benaviste currently running in third, and I've been keeping an eye on Josh Staffen in fourth. Very experienced in sim racing, very experienced with the Assetto Corsa Competizione, and I think that could be to his benefit, especially in conditions like these. That Acura, pretty stable in these conditions too. So you look at this top four in particular, they're all pretty close. Bill Clark's not so far back either in fifth, and you know, we've seen already it's easy to make a mistake in conditions like these. So 11 minutes to go, and there are a whole lot of different ways this thing could play out, and I think those five all are within striking distance as they run.
Josh Staffen notably in that Acura NSX GT3 out of the Honda stable everywhere else other than North America. And this car, again, a twin-turbo V6 under the bonnet in the rear. And Kevin, you're actually an engineer at Honda R&D, so you've got some experience working on Hondas in the past, but this is one of those cars that I look at that looks like something out of 2052. It is a super futuristic, low-slung, high performance sports car. It is right at home here on any racing circuit, and this NSX has found success not only in the real world but also in the virtual realm in the GT Rivals Championship a year or two ago with Tom O'Gorman and Carl Whitmer piloting it, and then of course Whitmer piloting again in the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. So both in the virtual world and the real world, this car has found some pace, and it's really cool to see it perform excellently in both of those situations.
Right, and I was actually really fortunate to be involved with the kind of road car development for this generation Acura NSX, and there's a lot of commonality between the road car and this GT3 version, and specifically with the engine itself, there's not a lot different about it. So it's really neat to see some of the kind of technology that you can kind of go to a dealership and just go buy a car and experience and see it here put to the test on the racetrack and have that success that you mentioned before. And
the same thing for the Mercedes-AMG GT3 that Sam Michaels is driving. We got a chance this past weekend to speak with a representative of the global customer team racing for Mercedes-AMG. And Ryan, one of the interesting things about this Mercedes is the differences between the GT3 and GT4 car, whereas the GT4 uses the bi-turbo. Hello, Sam Michaels. That was a little bit late into turn one, and he'll go off and find some damage to that Mercedes. But going back to the GT3, GT4, very similar looking on the outside other than some aero bits, but under the hood, very different power plants.
Yeah, that's right, and you know, you look at the power plant being one of the main differences between the GT3 and GT4, the electronic aids, you talked about the ABS and the traction control, there's a big difference there between the two, and that's by design. The GT4 car is cheaper to run, it's cheaper to buy, and doesn't quite have the same level of performance as GT3, and any GT3 car you're talking about, whether it's the Mercedes-AMG or the NSX or the Ferrari or the McLaren, Bentley, you name it. I mean, these are purebred racing cars. They are they are very similar in a lot of respects to the road-going variants, but the GT4 cars are much closer aligned with the road car, whereas the GT3 cars are certainly more tuned and prepped and developed for racing. So it gives you two different platforms. They accomplish two different things. In some cases, you can look at GT4 as a step into GT3, but it can also be a destination in and of itself. And the SRO with both of these platforms has been incredibly successful, encouraging manufacturer involvement, using their balance of performance to try and equalize disparate platforms, and building a great ecosystem for customer racing. And we've seen close racing throughout the world as a result, just like we're seeing at the front of this field as Koonin continues to hold off Aleksenkov, but it seems like it's only a matter of time until we might have a challenge for the lead.
It was an 8/10 gain for Aleksenkov last time by. He is on a mission to run that 300 car back down after he lost the lead in the opening laps, fell all the way back to fourth, and has since recovered and found a groove here in the wet conditions. 7 minutes to go here though, Kevin. The intensity is on. Koonin is fast, but is he fast enough to hang on with Aleksenkov pressuring him from behind?
Well, the beauty of this is that it's one thing to catch the car in front, but it's a complete different to try to pass. So it really depends on where the cars are kind of faster or slower than each other, and if it's not in a place that's easy to pass, then the advantage might not be there. So it's as they get a little closer, I think we'll start to see where that advantage might be.
So 6 minutes just about remaining here in our pro race. Again, as soon as this race goes checker, we will have the M race coming up right after, another 25-minute round. Really good run for Alexinkov through the fast and twisties there, Ryan, and puts that pressure on, but now the visibility goes away with the rooster tail off the 300 car out front.
Now, Alexinkov looks really comfortable in these conditions, and he's been patient. He's been building to this over the course of this 25-minute race. So we're 20 minutes in. Looks like a local yellow in this sector here, so somebody's had a problem. Now we see green up towards the top, so they've cleared that. Closing in ever so slightly, taking a lunge up the inside, and you can see the slide there. He did lose a little bit of time, but not much. Little twitch on corner exit for Alexinkov. I'm curious, if you were in Kunin's shoes, Kevin, what kind of tricks would you be playing to try and hang on to this lead with just 5 minutes to go?
Well, I mean, the first thing that I'd be focused on is to not give it away. As long as you don't make a mistake, then you're basically going to force the car behind you to kind of earn that position. You don't want to give it to them by making a little mistake and running wide or going off the track. Beyond that, it's really trying to maximize your corner exit leading onto all the straightaways, because if you can have just a little bit longer gap leading into any of the longer brake zones, then that makes it really hard for the car behind you to try to get beside you in the brake zones and set up a pass.
Big jump over the curb there on the left of turn 4 for Roman Alexinkov, and he gains a lot on corner entry, Ryan, a lot more aggressive, chucking the car off into the corner. And it seems like it's gripping, so he's building a little bit of confidence in the brakes and the mid-cornering speed, but he's sort of sacrificing exit speed just a little bit, and that's where Kunin is able to hang on, at least for now.
Well, and as Kevin talked about, that's the focus here for Kunin, just trying to get the corner exit as perfect as possible. Give yourself that little bit of an extra cushion going into a brake zone, but Alexinkov is close. Nowhere to go through this portion of the track. It is so tight. Like I talked about earlier, I've heard it described as a tourniquet of a racetrack because it is so tight. I thought that was such a good description, and it presents a real challenge for the overtaking car. And to Kevin's point, I think if Kunin can be mistake-free, it's going to put the onus on Alexinkov to make a move and maybe take a risky move to try and get that win. And it's the risk versus reward. How aggressive do you want to be to try and snare this win here in the final 3.5 minutes?
3.5 minutes to go. And it's all going to come down to, I think we've got about 2 laps left. Big move by Alexinkov into turn 1 just to get out of the mirrors of Zach Kunin into that first corner. But didn't go all the way. And that's more of a distraction tactic, Kevin, than it is an attempt to make a pass there. The goal is just to get out of the mirrors and make the guy second guess himself and maybe distract him enough to miss a braking point.
Yeah, that's right. It's really to make them, sort of tempt them into braking a little bit later than they actually should, and maybe making them run a little wide or something like that. And unfortunately, it didn't work for him, and really we're seeing Kunin kind of get those corner exits really perfect, and that's what's keeping him out in front right now.
One other thing he might have been trying is just testing that offline area where he hasn't run much this race. That's not the ideal racing line, just to see how much grip is there so that he can make a braking attempt, out-braking attempt a little bit later. Just gathering that data to try and inform a decision later in this race when it comes time to really make that lunge.
And that data gathering is happening all now so that he can have one last big dive somewhere. I think he's sort of trying to figure out where is the best passing opportunity right now in the current conditions. I'm looking at turn 1. I'm looking at the chicanes where he's had some good dives in the past. But really, the best passing opportunities are usually the ones that come at the end of a high momentum area into one of low momentum. Those tight hairpins after those chicanes and S's. But a little bit wide on corner entry, going to tuck it in tight on exit to try to get a straight line off here, Ryan. And we should be coming to the white flag this time by.
All right, keep a close eye then on this corner. Can he get a good run off? That leads to the pit straight and into that tight turn 1, which might prove to be the best passing zone on this track. It looks like Alexinkov is marginally closer this time. Defensive line from Kunin. Now they both drift out to the left to try and prepare for this corner. Not close enough to get it done this time.
A little bit deep, maybe. He did get it down to the apex just in time. But Kevin, we saw Zach Kunin moving over all the way to the pit wall, and it was maybe defensive, but also potentially to break that draft, to keep Alexinkov from slipstreaming there, and it seemed to be fairly effective.
Yeah, and it's sort of a frustration technique as well, as you move around the following cars trying to figure out what you're doing. So there's a lot of these little mental games going on from driver to driver.
Big yaw out of Zach Kunin over the curb. Big slide on exit for Alexinkov. Now dive on the brakes. Running out of time here, Ryan. About a half a lap left to go, and the chances of making a pass very quickly dwindle after this next chicane.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the focus just has to be on force a mistake, find a way through that way, because I'm not sure that there are going to be any other natural places to try and make a pass without an error from the car in front.
Big cuts through the chicane as well. Wiggle on corner exit. He has got that car trimmed out and ready to go. Running out of corners, though. Another big dive here. Saw the brake lights mid-corner for Zachary Kunin, so he is on the limit as well. Alexinkov from pole lost 3 positions and now trying to make them all up. Big dive into the corner. He misses it entirely. Will run way off the racetrack. Kunin hangs on for now. Tucks back in line. Does Alexinkov, but that might have been the last opportunity.
You can't fault him for trying, and all credit to Kunin there, not getting distracted with that white Ferrari diving to his flank. Able to put that into the back of his mind and hold him off here with just one final corner left to negotiate.
And Zach Kunin in the 300 car comes out of the final corner. He's going to pick up the victory in the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League round number 4 from the Hungaroring. Roman Alexinkov from pole all the way back up to second place after a drop to 4th. A job well done, however. Dean Benaviste behind him in the 75 third place podium for the red and blue Ferrari. Then Josh Staffen, Bill Clark, the rest of the top 5. Pretty close, tight to the run to the checkers there. Ian Burleson in the McLaren, the 720 car, will bring it home in 6th after a couple of hairy moments in the early going. But some solid racing at the front of the field, and even down the order. A couple cars with some battle scars there, Ryan, but it came down to the last sector for Kunin and Alexinkov, and it didn't quite swing the direction that the 612 car needed.
No, it didn't, and I think Kunin deserves all the credit in the world. He was very, very stout in his defense, didn't get distracted, didn't let the conditions get to him, and probably used the conditions to his advantage to some degree, because he had the spray coming off the back of his car to distract and obscure Alexinkov, whereas he had the clear view out the front, and we had no lap traffic to speak of for the bulk of that race, so that certainly helped Kunin out too. But I thought that was a masterful performance and a great display of defensive driving.
And there's a look at your race results. The Ferrari sweeping the podium. GT3 Evo generation cars in the front 2 spots, and the previous generation 488 GT3 in 3rd. And with that, we're going to move on to our AM race. But first, we would like to thank Kevin Boehm for joining us here tonight. Kevin, you've got to head out. But thanks so much for joining us here tonight. Always a blast to have you around, especially watching a race in the rain. One of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. It was an awesome race to watch, and thanks for having me.
All right, thanks so much, Kevin, and we'll let him get on his way. Ryan, we've got our AM race coming up here in just a minute, and now we're going to shift our focus to a bit more of a casual experience, and people that, as you mentioned earlier, might have practiced just a little bit less, but are here just to have a smile on their face, and I can't wait. The AM races have been a lot of fun in the past, and we're about to see them fire up as they are just preparing for their pace lap.
Yep, we got 12 takers here this week. A good turnout, to say the least, and should be fun. Like you talked about, a bit more low-key, which is good. And we understand the weather should be somewhat improved by the time this race starts. I think we should be having the beginning of the race session coming your way here shortly. And you can see, yes, it is raining. Yes, the track is wet, but maybe not to the same extent for our AM competitors, but it's still going to be a real challenge. And look at this mix of machinery up at the front of the field. We've got a Bentley, we've got an Aston Martin, I see a McLaren there. It's a great mix up at the front and a great display of all the different manufacturers that are involved in GT3 racing around the world.
A pretty good mix, that's for sure, and Adam Youngblood is on the outside in that number 1. I believe that's the Aston Martin. Arup Vera in the 108 car is in the Bentley. Of course, in row number 2, there's a Ferrari alongside a McLaren. That's Jimmy Morgan in the 280. Jackson Rusin, Pratik Mishra in 5th and 6th. Those are your front 3 rows. Lots of diversity here in that field. And we're getting ready to launch our field here at Racing in just a couple minutes. As you noted, a little bit less chaotic weather, but it still is wet. And the one thing that might affect the race this time, Ryan, is it might not be as consistent, which can be a challenge in its own right.
I was thinking about that too, that in some respects these guys they might have it a little bit worse than the pros, because if the rain is tapering off, that means the track conditions, the grip levels are going to be altered lap by lap, corner by corner, and that's something you have to stay on top of, especially with the different tools within the car, the traction control, the ABS, and then just your own driving, trying to be able to anticipate that. It's going to be a real challenge over the course of 25 minutes, especially if the rain does taper off entirely.
Having a look at the left-hand side of the screen as we get our pace lap underway. Bentley, Aston Martin, Ferrari, McLaren, Honda, Acura, the top 5 different manufacturers represented there. And in the next 7 or 8 cars, we've got a Lamborghini, a couple Porsches, a Mercedes, and a Nissan also represented there at the back. Webo in the number 18, Nissan GTR Nismo. This is a car that we always love to see here, and this is very different from its street counterpart.
Yeah, no kidding, but definitely a car that is popular, has some real following, and I was happy to see actually that there is one on the roster for this weekend's debut of the brand new Fanatec GT World Challenge Australia, powered by AWS. So that's cool to see. We saw at the last running of the Liqui Moly Bathurst 12-hour the Nissan looking very strong there. It's had some good runs domestically in Japan, but really cool car. Definitely a fan favorite, and just adds to the diversity on this grid.
Love that. Of course, that correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, but the Fanatec GT World Challenge Australia is a new series for 2021 as well.
Yes, so, well, it's new in terms of its association with SRO and joining the Global GT World Challenge Championship. There was a domestic GT3 championship in Australia previously. It's gone through a couple of different owners in recent years, and so the SRO recently jumped in with an ownership stake in that, which is great to add another championship to the GT World Challenge. And when I talk about that, it's not just a name, but it's actually a championship for the GT3 manufacturers that score points in all the different classes across 4 different GT World Challenge series. So the American Championship, which started last week, then you have the Australian Championship, a European, as well as an Asian Championship. So a really neat initiative there, and great to welcome our Antipodean friends from Australia and New Zealand to the GT World Challenge world.
What was that word you just used?
Antipodean.
That's another Ryan Marine word I've never heard before.
I think it just means anything Australia and New Zealand, if I'm not mistaken.
Every time I learn something new with Ryan Marine in the booth. Thanks for widening my vocabulary just a little bit more every week, Ryan. That's great. So Arup Vera, a new driver here in the 108 car in the Bentley. Reminiscent of the K-Pax Racing Bentleys, they have now switched to the Lamborghini platform for the 2021 season, and already found a lot of success there out at Sonoma, Ryan.
Yes, they did. Right off the bat, the switch to the Lamborghini didn't slow them down at all. Big change from Bentley to Lamborghini, but great to have them back in the North American Championship after a year competing in GT World Challenge Europe, and a huge investment from them and from Lamborghini. Great driver lineups too. It's really exciting to have them back in the championship, and I can't wait to see what they do throughout the course of this season.
Looking forward to another 25-minute race here for the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League. The AM race, 25 minutes on the timing and scoring. Arup and Adam sharing the front row. John and Jimmy, row 2. Row 3, Jackson and Pratik. Row 4, Thomas and Peter. Row 5, Chris and Jai. Row 6, Webo and Kishan and Robbie Montanola. Wow, big launch up the inside by one of the Lamborghinis, the 95 of John Williman, had somewhere to go. No, that was not him. Who was that? That was the 72 car, Thomas Simpson. He made 3 wide, 4 wide into the first corner, and now there's crashing behind him into turn 1.
Yeah, as clean as the pro race start was, this one not so much. We see carnage back in the back of that picture there. Somebody's off and trying to recover. That was a big move. I'm not sure if it came a little bit too soon or if the front row was just a bit ginger trying to accelerate in these conditions. But in any event, great start from the Lamborghini right there at the beginning, and looks like most of the field has sorted itself out after a few scary moments.
Yeah, oh, there's a spin in the background. Another one of the Porsches has looped it. I think there was a two-car incident back there. Jackson Rusin we're on board with now. The number 22 has a Lamborghini up the inside. There's a touch. That will send him around. And that is the 280 car of Jimmy Morgan, who started up in, I believe, the second row. So he's gone backwards very, very quickly. There's Thomas Simpson, who was the driver that made that move up the inside. Wrongly thought it was another car, the John Williman machine. He is in a similar-looking Ferrari, but he ended up coming out in ninth after all that. Simpson making a whole bunch of time, but on the ragged edge right now, sliding around.
To say the least, yeah, he is very aggressive on turn-in, and you can see that car is in yaw a lot.
Wow.
Look at that. That is some drifting stuff. You don't see that out of GT3. Look at the opposite lock on this onboard shot. Great car control here from Thomas Simpson in the early going.
And we were going back to Silverstone. We had a couple drivers that were running on either keyboards or something like an Xbox controller, and typically in racing sims, that sort of thing is a massive disadvantage to those who have the granularity of a steering wheel. But Thomas Simpson is not. If it's a disadvantage, nobody told him, because he is flying right now.
Yeah, now, unless you know for sure that he's using one of those controllers or the keyboard, I think we just have to kind of guess based on the onboard shot, and some of those really quick movements like that typically indicate something like that. And yeah, really impressed with what he's been able to do here from the start, looking very aggressive but very comfortable in difficult conditions.
Yeah, you see the hand snapping back and forth is usually the indicator, and he's making it work right now. Pratik Mishra is behind him in the 777 Ferrari, the green and white liveried car, and now closing in on him here through turn number 2. Big slide on corner entry, and Lamborghini versus Ferrari. This is a fight we've seen before.
Yeah, it is. Some bragging rights here, I think, between the two. Look at that slide up ahead from Simpson. That thing was totally sideways, but he was able to catch it. Probably leaning on some of that traction control a little bit, but man, this is fantastic. A little bit too much that time, and it opened the door, and Patrick was able to make that move and get through for the lead, but I wouldn't be surprised if Simpson mounts a counterattack based on how strong he's looked here in the early going.
I was going to tell them they're not going to give you points for the amount of slip angle you've got, but if they did, I think he'd be winning. Here he comes again for the race lead. Fantastic stuff here in the Amp Cup. Big chop by the 777 car off the nose of that. Saw the corner, didn't have overlap, and went right to the apex. But I don't think Simpson is out of this just yet by any stretch.
No, without a doubt. And again, as we talked about in the first race tonight, these conditions are such that any lead is a tenuous one, because it's so easy to just barely overstep those bounds, go for a spin, and all of a sudden any advantage you might have disappears. That's a big aggressive dive up the inside there from the Lamborghini.
Wow, that was tight. I didn't think they were going to come out the other side of that bridge, but here they go, door to door into the final sector. And Mishra hangs on for now, but Simpson is not done fighting yet. Into the final corner, beating the doors up on these expensive supercars, but we are far from over, only 4 minutes in.
Amazing opening 4 minutes to this race, and Simpson and Mishra putting on a show. Well, that was an interesting move there, and look at the crossover here, all up in the front straightaway and into the braking zone. I'd say the Lamborghini's got the advantage, at least as they run right now.
777.
As I say that.
Wow, that's a little too deep there, though. Ryan got in on the brakes just a touch too late, and Simpson will go back by, but these guys are having a blast. In the background, I see John Williman in the 95 Ferrari, maybe approaching these two as they battle for the race lead, slowing each other down.
Yeah, I think he's probably pretty happy running where he is, watching these two go side by side, door to door, running wide off track from time to time, and you guys just sort yourselves out for a little while, and I'll take my time getting there.
I think they might have done it for now, but the last time we said that, it closed up pretty quickly, so I think we'll hold judgment for another lap. Look at Simpson out of control in that Lamborghini. That looks like something out of Formula Drift, not SRO competition, but man, it looks cool.
It is. That is just unbelievable. And again, to do it with what we have to believe is an unconventional control mechanism, that just blows my mind that somebody can do that. Really, really impressed.
John Williman is closing that gap to second place, though, and while that Lamborghini is ragged, Williman keeping it on course on a more traditional racing line is a little bit quicker. But how do you get by a car that's sliding around like this, Ryan? That's hard to find room.
You know, I was thinking that too. I mean, you can usually anticipate what the car in front of you is going to do, but it's hard to anticipate this, and that's not a knock at all on Simpson. I've been, like I said, really impressed with his car control, and I think he's limited a little bit in terms of his ability to have nuanced control of that car, and I'm with you. I think that does put Williman in a tough spot here, trying to anticipate what the car in front is going to do and to be able to position his car appropriately.
Watching Williman try to open a door here on this number 72 Lamborghini. Mishra out front, beginning to open up a bit of a lead. It's 1.9 as they come across the line this time through. And lap time for Mishra, a 1:59.160, about a second quicker than Simpson. Williman, a 1:57.8, quicker than both of those front two drivers.
Brakes there, and look at this other car coming into the mix. That's Youngblood. I was watching him in the background just a bit earlier and has definitely snuck up into the fray. And to make a move here, this is the fight for third, final step on the podium, working to the outside of Williman's Ferrari. And I think he's going to get the job done in that Aston. Impressive stuff.
Big jump over the curb for the CrowdStrike AWS Aston Martin. And now sets his sights on the third place car, or excuse me, the second place car of Thomas Simpson. Still on the ragged edge here. That's what I love about GT3 racing, though. Wow, Williman had a big moment. Lamborghini versus Aston versus Ferrari. These are all the poster cars battling for position here at the Hungaroring. So this is one of those moments where you kind of pinch yourself in the real world watching cars like this race each other on such an equal playing field.
Yeah, and I talked earlier about the GT3 history here at the Hungaroring, and it started in 2016. A Mercedes-AMG driven by Dominic Baumann and Maxi Buch won it wasn't known by this name at the time, but is now the GT World Challenge Europe Sprint Cup race there. The next year, it was Audi's turn at the top with Marcel Fossler and Dries Vanthoor in a WRT entered Audi R8. The next year, there were a couple of races, and Mirko Bortolotti and Christian Engelhardt won race one in a Lamborghini. The second race was won by the Mercedes of Raffaele Marciello and Michael Meadows. And then the most recent SRO race at the Hungaroring last year's was unfortunately canceled due to the pandemic, but in 2019 it was swept by the Mercedes of Vince Abril and Raffaele Marciello. So that's what I talked about earlier. I thought Mercedes might factor in well, but I think the rain has been an equalizer, and we've seen that play out to this point.
Simpson and Youngblood battling for second. Mishra across the line, goes quicker, 1:58.9. And that time by was the quickest of anybody on the racetrack, save for Arut Berra in the 1:08, who runs in fifth in the Bentley. He was the pole sitter, remember, and kind of got swarmed on that chaotic start. And now all four of the front four are on top of each other here at the exit of turn one.
Yeah, this has been wild racing at the front of this, and we talked about, this is going to, contact there, and around goes the Ferrari. Yikes. That's not good. That's a real shame there for Mishra, who had a great start to this race. Hopefully he can get recovered and get back up into this mix. But we talked about, the AM race, it's going to be a bit more relaxed. Nonsense.
Relaxed?
It hasn't been at all.
I think these guys are up on the wheel more than the pro guys were.
Sure looks that way.
Certainly
or up on the
driving.
keyboard.
That's for sure. Simpson goes the lead with that spin into pass on the 777, who gets back rolling, drops to fifth. So Thomas, John, and Chris, Thomas, John, Adam, Chris Jackson are your top five. Jackson Rusin moves up into the fifth spot. And number 22, big wiggle in the following Mercedes. That's the three car of Minton. And he gathered it back up, but he's also kind of sliding that car around like a drift car.
Yeah, well, part of that's the conditions, to say the least. I mean, these are really difficult conditions for anybody. Racing in the rain it's one of those things big move up the inside, and I was afraid that was going to happen. Contact, that was optimistic at best, and around goes the NSX of Rusin. But I was going to say, a lot of drivers say they like racing in the rain, and I think a lot of them are lying.
Whoop, there goes Williman. He spins around in the rainy conditions out here. Simpson and Williman now actually, that would be Youngblood behind him. And here comes Youngblood up the inside. It has been a revolving door at the front of the field so far today. I don't think anyone's getting invited to stay here either. The lead has been exchanging positions quite a bit.
Youngblood was able to find a way by, and we talked about the challenge of trying to anticipate the movements of that Lamborghini, given the driver's handicap, shall we say, in using an unconventional controller, it would appear. And it sounds like the ping rate is pretty high too, so there's some lagging issues perhaps with that as well. But Youngblood was able to do it. No one had really been able to say that yet to this point in the race, and let's see if he can pull away. I think that Aston looks the most comfortable of all the front-running cars we have been watching.
Certainly does. There's Minton again with a big moment with Jimmy Morgan trying to run him back down, still trying to recover after getting shuffled back on the start. He started in row number 2, I believe in the 4th spot. Now we'll almost grab a top 5 away from Minton, who has a big slide on the downhill turn 3. And both these cars have a little bit of damage, but move Morgan up into 5th.
Yeah, we're going to have some beat-up race cars at the end of this one. I think Youngblood's car looks pretty much as it did at the start of this race, but beyond that, I think it's a good thing these are virtual cars, or else we'd be cashing some checks trying to get these things repaired.
Youngblood does have a little bit of right side damage, but nothing that should affect the performance of that car, something of which Assetto Corsa Competizione does model. In fact, if you damage your car or get hit or hit somebody else, it will let you know what you've hit, what you've broken, and you can come in and get that fix on a pit stop. But I think without, barring for major collisions, you can generally keep rolling. These GT3 cars are pretty substantial and can take a fairly sizable hit. And that's one of the things I love about these cars, Ryan, is you can get your elbows out just a little bit, and it's not always a return to pits moment for everybody.
Yeah, you can. It's not quite like you would see in a touring car race or something like that. These are aero-dependent cars. You see the dive planes there, those wing elements on the front of the cars themselves, the splitter as well at the front of the cars. Those are very susceptible to damage, and if you break or alter some of those at all, that does have an impact on the handling. But by and large, as long as you make sure you don't damage the suspension, the steering is pointed straight, you can pretty much live with whatever happens, and that's what most of our competitors are more or less being forced to do here in this race, given the all the contact that we've seen to this point. That purple Mercedes a bit off the pace there in a precarious position. I hope everyone's able to negotiate that all right.
Sean Patel in the number 4 car, and through goes, I believe that's Williman on a recovery charge after the spin a couple laps ago. So Youngblood, Simpson, and Williman, the top 3. And Chris Hazewinkle in the 117 Porsche running 4th right now, but Jimmy Morgan is running him down pretty quickly. So I think we might see a pass for P4 here in a moment.
Let's keep an eye on this. Let's keep an eye on Williman as well, who is starting to catch up with Simpson once again, and maybe that Ferrari-Lamborghini battle will rejoin. But at the moment, I do think this Morgan car looks pretty strong. Had the spin earlier, but has done a decent job to recover, and still 11.5 minutes left. Good pace out of this car. Maybe with some luck, there's a chance at a podium spot if you can keep it clean.
And here's the battle for 3rd, Williman and Hazewinkle. The 95 and 117, Ferrari versus Porsche. Bring the McLaren into the mix as well. 3-horse race for 3rd spot.
Yeah, 5.5 seconds from 1st to 2nd, and then you come back to this fight right here. And it looked like Williman was pulling away from the Porsche, so I think he might have had a miscue of some kind to bring Hazewinkle back into the mix. Let's see if Williman can gap him. It does seem like here in the last few corners he's been able to build that advantage back somewhat. But it just goes to show, just one little miscue, and everything you've worked so hard to build can go right out the window.
And for Williman, he had just run his best lap of the race, a 1:57.393, just one lap ago. That's also the best lap that anybody on the racetrack has run in this entire session. So Williman is really the benchmark for everyone else to run up to. Here comes Morgan now, side by side with Hazewinkle down the front straightaway. Porsche grabs a little bit of grass, and Morgan should have this complete by the time they get to turn 1 with 10.5 minutes to go.
Yeah, it's certainly looking that way. Hazewinkle just got a bit wide there in that final corner, opened the door up. They're pretty even on the brakes, and if he can make that inside line work, the McLaren should be okay. Like Hazewinkle got into the grass a little bit too, which probably halted some of his acceleration out of that first corner, so that has allowed Morgan to complete the move, and he's got that green Ferrari to try and track down up the road. And Williman, who seems to have recovered after the the little bobble, whatever it was that brought him back to this pack. He's been pretty tidy since then and is starting to run down Simpson.
Also keeping an eye on the number 18, that's that Nissan of Webo Chen. And typically, if we're not talking about you, you're either way, way out front like Adam Youngblood, or you've just had a very quiet, good day. And there is some damage on Webo Chen's Nissan, but running 7th right now, grabbed a couple spots after a few others have gone off course. And sometimes quietly running inside the 7th, 6th, 5th area, that can be a solid day as well. And Webo's by himself, but enjoying the clear racetrack, I'm sure.
Yep, should have better view of things. That didn't quite go according to plan right there, just as we're heaping praise on Webo. And, yep, that's what happens. So apologies from us in the broadcast side of things. We have a tendency to do that. So we'll try and focus our attentions elsewhere here for a moment as we look at Williman now, who is on a tear. He's picked up a couple of seconds on Simpson since we last checked in. Not a whole lot of time left, just under 9 minutes as he tries to run down that Lamborghini. And out front, Youngblood looking very strong. He's already built that gap up to 9 seconds. And
you had mentioned that the previous lap there was likely some sort of spin, and that seemed to have been the case. He had run a 2:13 prior. Now backs that up with his best lap of the race again, a 1:56.487. And
wow.
Again, the fastest lap we've seen anybody run. That was a full second quicker than the race leader, Adam Youngblood, last time by.
Yeah, that's the good news. The bad news is there's not enough time, at least at that pace, to run down the race leader, but perhaps there is a way to catch Simpson for second spot. You see some flags being displayed by the virtual corner marshals, and we've got a Mercedes off to the right of the track there. I love the way that Assetto Corsa Competizione put in those flag marshals like that. It's just a little added touch, and it adds to the immersion in this sim, and anybody who's driven knows how much those corner marshals are your eyes and ears. We owe them so much. So even the virtual ones, we say thank you. We doff our caps to you, standing out there in the virtual rain, helping us have this event.
That was one of the first things I noticed getting on a racetrack in the real world for the first time was, my first driving experience was at Road America in the rain in someone else's Spec Miata. The first thing I noticed was how familiar I was with corner station locations, and that's due to simulators like Assetto Corsa Competizione. They're not going to teach you how to drive, Ryan, but what they will teach you is how to build familiarity with racetracks and their features, such as those corner workers. And having them functioning in a sim like this is really more useful than you would think. Once you get onto the racetrack in the real world, you've all of a sudden got those corner stations memorized without even having to try, which is a real value in simulated racing, not just for the racing aspect, but also for track familiarity.
Yeah, that's right. So it's not just immersion for those of us playing here on the sim, but for those using this to actually learn the track, get up to speed before a real race weekend. Just having those little extra features inside the sim can be incredibly beneficial. You can see the gap there. Yes, there is a lapped car in between. The 002 making its way inside of Simpson. And loving every minute of this is Williman, watching those two cars duke it out, because anytime you're side by side like that, you're sacrificing lap time, and that has brought the Ferrari to the doorstep of the Lamborghini.
And those that were a little bit keen-eyed there saw the blue flag out of the corner station. That is an advisory flag for the lap car, which I believe is Peter S. in the number 2, that orange and blue Porsche. There it is again on the right-hand side of the screen. An advisory flag that just is informational, tells you that there is a faster car approaching, typically on a lap further ahead than you are. And there's no requirement, at least to my knowledge in SRO, to do anything about it other than prevent a situation like that. So just a bit of a bump from front to rear, and Williman will get back rolling.
Yeah, that actually was pretty benign, all things considered, given how heavy that contact looked like he was shaping up to be. Peter S., I thought, has been really strong. His pace looks great, so I'm not quite sure why he's all the way back there in 11th, what happened early on to drop a lap, because he's running laps that, well, until there, were right there with what the leaders were running. This is going to create an interesting moment here. That was not the kind of interesting I was looking for.
Well, we got something interesting either way. Williman went wide and came back on the course, and I don't think that Peter knew that the Ferrari was out there, and he tried to rejoin the circuit Just wasn't room to do it, and ended up getting him tagged and turned around. So that will separate the battle for second, and Simpson breathes a sigh of relief, Ryan, with 5 minutes to go.
He sure does, yeah. That Christmas comes early, or very late, one or the other, for Thomas Simpson, because it did look like Williman was closing in and was going to have a chance there to challenge for second. Williman just can't buy a break here today. It's been one frustration after another, it looks like, and so Simpson fairly safe up ahead of Morgan, who's in that McLaren, now up to third. Remember I said a couple of breaks, if he keeps it clean, he could have a podium. Oh, looky there, right there in contention, and 4 minutes left. It's not out of the realm of possibility that something could happen and he could run down Simpson and get up to second as well. Youngblood well in control out in front of this thing.
Bit of a slip up in the chicane there for Adam Youngblood. However, looking at his lap times, last time by was a 1:55.734. Best lap of anybody, with the exception of Arut Berra, who was our pole sitter. He just ran his best lap of 55.1. So quickest car on the racetrack, maybe no surprise due to the pace that he showed in qualifying. Just never really got to show it with all the chaos in that opening lap where he dropped down the order.
I think that car was in the pits for some repairs early on, and now he's in the same position that we saw Peter Ress in earlier, where you're fast, you're catching the leaders, you want through, but how do you do it in a way that isn't going to affect the leaders in their own fight? And that's never an easy position to find yourself in.
Certainly not. Simpson dealing with some lap traffic. There are some other battles happening throughout the field. One I'm keeping my eye on is Minton in the number 3 and Chris Hazewinkle in the background in this 117 Porsche. This battle could condense just a little bit with some shifting around of some race cars, so we'll keep our eyes peeled for that. But out front, Youngblood leads the way, comes across the line. This should be 2 laps to go this time through.
Yep, under 3 minutes to go. We're running laps right around the 2-minute mark, a little bit better in the case of some of our front runners. And Adam's doing everything he needs to do. No reason to push all that hard at the moment. Looks like clear track up ahead. No lap cars to deal with. As I say that, you see the white flag displayed. And in this context, that would mean a slow-moving vehicle somewhere up the road, although I don't see it. And now I think I do, just out in front a little bit. So he does have that to deal with, but that's why those flags are there. There is that car, and yikes, that's not what you want if you've got a commanding lead, as Adam does with just a couple of minutes to go, but he's able to get through it.
White flag again, in the context, as you mentioned, that context, white flag only means last lap when it's displayed from the start stand next to the start-finish line. Everywhere else used to denote a slow-moving vehicle, potentially safety vehicles, etc. One of the, that's one of those flag rules I didn't learn about until relatively recently, actually. The other being the red and yellow debris slippery surface flag, which is something you don't see a ton of, but when you see it, it's hopefully it's not too late to have slowed down to miss something. Meanwhile, back to second, I wanted to keep our eyes on Simpson and Morgan, because Morgan has actually passed Simpson, changed for second place.
Yep, it did happen, so I'm not sure if there was a mistake that led to that or if that was just on pure pace, but Jimmy Morgan has had a nice recovery, looked really, really strong early, was making some aggressive moves, and one of them didn't quite stick, if I remember correctly, and I can't remember if that was maybe got some help from some of his competitors or something along the way, but at any rate, since then, it's been a nice climb back through the field, probably too far back now to try and make a run for the lead with just a minute to go, but all things considered, a decent recovery, and a second place to come out of this weekend here at the Hungaroring is nothing to scoff at.
And given the starting position that Morgan had, which was in the second row, dropping all the way down the order and then recovering for a second, I think that'll be a positive day for Jimmy Morgan. So only 2.7 miles left as we hit the white flag lap. Youngblood already heading down the hill into turn 3, and his lead expanding out significantly now. But running a picture-perfect race and slicing and dicing through the chaos that was happening at the front early in the race, has put on a show and has been very consistent and calm at the front of this field. And others have had incidents where they kind of threw away their track position. Youngblood has done nothing of the sort.
Yeah, measured in his approach, to say the least. We watched him work his way through into the lead and felt like he was very circumspect, taking a long, hard look at what was up ahead of him, not forcing anything, taking his time, not taking undue risk, and it has served him well. And then since getting to the lead, he's done everything right, just slowly but steadily expanding and extending that advantage to the tune of now up over 30 seconds over second place. This has been a strong performance, to say the least, from Adam Youngblood, and he's just a few corners away from victory.
Absolute domination here in the AM race for the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League. As we get to the tail end of this, keep your eye on CrowdStrikeRacing.com to learn more about these events and how you can participate and what the schedule will look like. For Adam Youngblood, the schedule is looking like it's getting a little bit jammed up with Victory Lane. It's rainy on the racetrack here at the Hungaroring, but sunshine and rainbows for Adam Youngblood. Final corner, checkered flag, and Adam Youngblood will win the AM race in the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League and pick up a checkered flag, a wet one here at the Hungaroring. Jimmy Morgan, as you mentioned, Ryan, that battle all the way back through the field. Some scars left on that bright orange McLaren, but as long as he can navigate these final two corners, he'll go home in second.
Yep, Simpson right there behind. He's had an interesting race, to say the least. Currently in podium contention, had that huge start, got to the front and led much of the early part of this race, and has run in podium contention ever since. Both he and Morgan have a lot to be happy with. Both show the scars of battle from the race here today, but both will get to stand on the podium.
Thomas Simpson put on a heck of a show today, if nothing else. Grabs the podium on top of that. John Willeman battled through it, and I think he'll probably be a little bit disappointed on where he came out, just missing out on the podium. But I think a recovery of some sort was warranted there. Fourth place, top five. And Minton comes home in fifth in a bruised Mercedes. Chris Hazewinkle in sixth in a Porsche that has all the fenders still on it. Glad to see that. Webo Chen got some body panels disrupted on this Nissan, but will bring it home in seventh after trying to stay out of trouble most of the day, and it looked like he had done just that.
Yep, exactly, and that's half the battle, especially in wet conditions like this. Just keep the nose relatively clean, and you should have a decent result. Easier said than done, as we see here. Unfortunately, a couple corners still to go here for Webo to take the checkered flag, but seventh place to show for his efforts here today.
Youngblood celebrating with, I think, attempted a burnout. Not a lot of dry asphalt to do burnouts on. But for the race winner, it was a dominant performance. 33.2 seconds up the road from Jimmy Morgan. Thomas Simpson third. Willeman fourth. Minton fifth. Hazewinkle, Chen, Barra was our pole sitter who had a lot of pace, just couldn't quite finish it out. He looked like he flamed out pretty strongly and quickly after running the best lap of anyone in the field. Ended up missing the rest of the race, crashed out on that next lap.
Yep, exactly right. But you know what? It was fun. What a wild start to this one. That was really exciting. And we talked again about how this AM group might not have taken this quite as seriously, might not have put as much practice in, but it definitely didn't take away from the show. I thought we had some great racing up and down the field, and the start to this was about as wild as anything you'll ever see.
Absolutely. The show certainly was entertaining. We had a lot of great racing, starting all at the beginning of that. We're not quite done with this season, though. We've got April 8th as our final round of this season, round 5 of 5. That will, I believe, will be happening at Monza. So that's a very, very fast place, Ryan. Looking forward to that. That's one of those halo racetracks that a lot of people internationally look as one of the classic European road courses, and I cannot wait to do that in a couple weeks in April.
Yep, longtime host of the Italian Grand Prix. I mentioned earlier that the Hungaroring has the second longest streak of consecutive appearances on Formula One calendars, and Monza the only track that can boast an even a longer streak after the cancellation of Monaco last year. So plenty of history at both of these circuits, and can't wait to see what Monza has in store for us.
Wrapping up things here for round 4 of 5 at the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League for CrowdStrike Racing. Big thanks to CrowdStrike for having us out yet again. Of course, CrowdStrike's goal in 2021 is to win as one. I think we all got to win tonight watching this amazing virtual racing. Again, CrowdStrike is the official internet and cloud security provider of the Fanatec GT World Challenge powered by AWS. Round 2 of the season happens at the end of April, the first weekend in May. And then, again, our next round will be on April 8th for the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League from Monza. Kyle Heyer alongside Ryan Marine. We'll see you next time virtually, and then again in the real world at the tail end of April at COTA for the next round of the Fanatec GT World Challenge America powered by AWS, rooting on CrowdStrike Racing as always. We'll see you next time here on CrowdStrike Racing.